Hey everyone, welcome back to Cybersecurity TV. Today we're gonna talk about the Burp Scanner 2.0. So if you have been working in the security industry, you must have come across the Burp Suite tool. Of course, it has tons of several interesting features, but one of them is really interesting is the scanner feature. Now, today we are not going to go in much depth like how to use the burp scanner, but I wanted to talk about the recent update they have made like with burp 2.0, and the major update was around the scanner tab, which is now missing, and most of the folks are struggling a little bit like to understand the new scanner feature, which has its advantages, and I do see some disadvantage from for that how I used the burp scanner over the time, but of course it has so many number of advantages that we can ignore some of the things that they have missed. One of the things that the burp scanner offers is sort of like active versus passive scanning. Now, if you have been using any dynamic analysis tools such as Acunautics, NetSparker, WebInspect, or AppSpider, or Sensic Hailstorm, or any sort of web application vulnerability scanner, Burp does the similar thing. Of course, it has a different checkers and stuff like that, but yeah, it provides active scanning same as what the other scanner does. And then the passive scanning also is one of the good feature of the burp suite. So how it works is, let's say you are on the website and you don't want actively send any traffic or generate a traffic for that website. So what you would like to do is just kind of passively monitor all the traffic while you traverse the application or while you call the application. So it pretty much gathers all the data, and based on all the information it kind of analyze whether there are any vulnerabilities or not. Most of the times it covers vulnerabilities such as if in the application response it finds any sensitive information such as password or any version information, or maybe it's missing any header information and you're not using SSL certificate, or not you're not using XML options and all those things. So it can easily detect all those things without even making any request. So that's why it's an amazing feature, and I always keep it on because there is no reason to turn it off. You're not doing a generating an extra load on this web server anyway. Now, what they have changed in Burp 2.0 is they have managed to do it a task-based model. So we'll get to a demo in a little bit, but just to give you guys a little bit of understanding that earlier, if you had to let's say perform scan on 15 or 20 APIs or endpoints, or maybe let's say a website, right? You have one configuration options where you configure all the options and then you scan using the same configuration for all the 20 endpoints. Now with the task-based model you can have unique configuration for each endpoint, and that's why it's really useful. So you can manage your resources, you can manage the configuration task, etc. for each endpoint. Now it has also got some limitation. It's not sort of like any functionality, or I would say the technical limitation. The only limitation that I see is from the user endpoint, customer perspective. So in the previous UI, I was able to see what all vulnerabilities were found by each endpoint. Now it's not easily segregate the data. We'll see in a demo in a little bit. So let's jump on to the. I have actually two version of Burp running, one before 2.0 and one after 2.0. So we'll compare and see both of them. All right, so this one is, of course, the earlier version than 2.0, where you can see the scanner tab is right here. In 2.0, when we jump on, you'll be able to see the difference. So here, how typically it works is, yeah, of course, we have gone through in the previous session how to configure the proxy and how to send the any how to scan the website a little bit. So I'm not gonna go into that many details, but the main thing you need to understand is the options tab on the Burp tool. So here it pretty much covers everything, like you what tag insertion points should be, what are the active scanning engines, so how many scan you want Burp to run at a time, because every web scanner has a different capacity. So yeah, sometimes it can have up to 10 or 5. Then after, of course, optimization, sometimes you want to do the scan done quickly, or but you don't care about the accuracy, so you have to find a trade-off. But yeah, there is a normal for both the option, which is sort of default and I use most of the time. This one is interesting. It tells you like what are the issues that you want to scan, and this is what I had always trouble uh, when I'm scanning the website. So if I'm scanning a website with the 15, 20 pages or 20 endpoints, and if I only want to concentrate on SQL injection for first one, but I don't want, let's say, profile page to be scanned for SQL injection, but I want it to be scanned for cross-site scripting. Is there a way for me to do it in this version? Probably not, because the only way I can do is run the scan one URL at a time and change the configuration every time it finishes. But it's very tedious, very time consuming. So, but that's the biggest advantage we get in the task-based model. And of course, static code analysis. I usually do it with the active and passive scanning, because when you are traversing the application and when you're crawling the application, it gives you a lot of information with the JavaScript and CSS and all those info. So Burp can pretty much do the static code analysis without generating a lot of traffic, and doesn't hurt. So that's why I always choose the active versus passive scanning. So and here, it says active scanning versus passive scanning. As I always said, passive scanning, I always turn it on, like scan everything, because it doesn't matter. We are not hurting anyone's traffic or anything. So I just keep it on. And for this one, I always use the switch scope, which is define the target here. And when you're scanning in the scan queue, you'll be able to see all those URLs that you're scanning, and also the progress of it. And here you'll be able to see all the issue activity. So this was before the Bulb 2.0. Now when you load the Bulb 2.0, you'll see this window, and if you have been not used to this one, you will be surprised and you'll be a little confused. Okay, how do I use this? So it looks confusing at very first moment, but then it's not that confusing. Now you'll struggle to find, okay, where's the scanner tab? So there's no scanner tab. There's a dashboard page, and this is your scan window. Now, how it really works is, let's say if I want to perform two scan, one on the sign up page, one on the profile page, and both the scanning, I want to do it in a with the different configuration. So how it works is, of course, when you load up the Burp for any new project, this two configuration or task comes with it. So live passive crawl from proxy, so it will do all the passive scan for all the traffic. Of course, you can pause it. So here is the and of course you can delete this particular task as well, and then you can also change the configuration. But this comes by default. And then it also comes with the live audit from proxy all the traffic. This is audit, I mean the actual security testing. So instead of scanning, they are now named as a audit, so don't get confused what's the audit is. But yeah, audit and crawl is the two new names that they have given here. So all the audit or the scanning they'll do for all the passive traffic will be here. You can also kind of view details. So let me do one thing. Let me let's start one of the let me see the hood. All right, so here is our Firefox, and let's try to navigate to this website. Of course, okay, all right. Now, as you can see here, uh, in the options, if it's like an out of scope, it won't give you the proxy history, all those settings that we discussed earlier, I think in the first or second episode. So you define the scope here, and that's how it will determine what to scan and what not to scan, right? Now let me just close the previous version of Burp because it's conflicting, and we need to make sure, oops, there's our proxy is running. Okay, perfect. Now let me refresh, right? I'm not doing anything. I'm just crawling through the website. I'm going to the signing page. I'm contact us page, just like a normal user would do. Now, as you could see here, you'll see the issue activity, and these issues were found based on the passive analysis. So now you see how important it is. Like, you haven't done anything, but it's still found, did some passive audit or passive security assessment, as one would say, and it finds some issues. And here you can see, like, okay, there's one critical, two lows, and then you can also see, what it had scanned. And in the passive scan, there are only two phases. Of course, the active, I believe there are five phases, and then there's JavaScript analysis. So here you can also see these activities and any events, and you can, good thing is you can also filter it, if you only want to see high, or you want to see low vulnerabilities as well. So this gives you a nice filter here. A crawl, as you can see, 47 items added to the sitemap. So we only I think we only clicked on four items, but it was able to found this 47 items. And if you want to see the details, you can go here and sitemap, it loads up here. Now let's create a scan for one of the item. So okay, right, let's say this one we want to scan. So this is sort of like, new scan wizard, or earlier when you just send to the scanner, this, if the scan job is running, it will start scanning right away. Right now, since we do not have any scan configuration by default, it's gonna ask you, okay, how do you want to scan it? So audit selected items, of course we have this item to scan. Then you can go to scan configuration. This is the same window that we had in the options tab on the previous Burp version, if you remember. But what it offers is, there's few good features here. So this is same as Audit Optimization, but there are few new checkboxes here. Of course, we don't want to go into too many details. Now, this is the thing that I was talking about. For example, on this page, let's say index.jsp page, I only want to scan passive vulnerabilities, or let's say not in, let's say intrusive vulnerabilities. I can select that, right? So okay, we are only going to scan that. How do you want application errors to be handled during the audit? Again, audit is scanning, so you can define the numbers however you want. Insertion point types, where you want Burp to insert the payloads, if you want to modify any of the locations. So these are all um, similar things that we talked about earlier. Let's see if I can find uh, JavaScript analysis. Yes, this is something good that I found, like uh, because a lot of websites are using JavaScript, and JavaScript sometimes have, by analyzing the JavaScript, you can determine whether it has DOM-based access or not. So you can find those things here, and you can configure it here whether you want to Burp to analyze those JavaScript or not. I would say highly recommend, yes, do it. Like, again, it's not going to generate any much traffic. As you're crawling the website, it's gonna do the JavaScript analysis. So of course, just to keep it on. Let's say ignore instance points if you want to ignore anything. Okay, and all right, let's save this one for now. And then the resource pool that we had, how many threads that you want Burp to run. So this is the resource pool. Of course, you can change it however you want based on your web server capacity, and you click OK. So now what will happen is, as you can see, there is third task created, that the audit of demo test file.net. Now when you create, okay, so let's go back here, and let me click here. Now, when you go here to scan again, you can create a new scan window, or you can add to the existing task with the existing configuration, which is very interesting. Now, if you open the new scan window, of course, you can do the same thing. You can build a new scan configuration. For example, I was talking about maybe in the previous one, we pretty much did like, everything. We scan for intrusive vulnerabilities, but now we only want to do the, let's say, where did it go? Audit optimization. Nope. Yeah, we only want to do, let's say, a light. Then you can save it and run it. That's also a possibility. And here, if you go into details, you could see there are 4 or 5 active phases and then 3 JavaScript phases. Now, one thing I did not like about this one, so for example, if you want to see how many vulnerabilities, so you can see how many vulnerabilities, like it says 2 issues and 3 informational, like 2 critical and 3 informational, but you can't get the details. Like for example, in this configuration, you have 6 7 URLs running that will show all the number, and it will also show all the activities, but then you have to kind of determine, okay, what the vulnerability affects which page on this host and path very column. But there's no easy way to double click here and just see the vulnerability for this particular URL. So that's the only minor drawback it has, but yeah, otherwise it's still a great feature. And one other great feature that it has is in the previous version, and that there is a in the previous one there was another way to do it, but they have brought the application login here. Now, all the third-party scanners, like all the NetSparker and Equinetics and all the AppScan and AppSpider that you see, they have a macro that you configure so it can log in by itself and run the scan. So same thing now you can do with the burp as well. You can create the new, you can label it, you can provide the username password, and then that way it works. Now you can also, so for example, like if you have it saved somewhere, you can also pull the existing one like you did here. And what I had used to do is, let's see if I can find it right now. Yes, session handling rules. So I generally create a macro for to verify whether the session is valid or not, and if it's not valid, it will log in. The burp will log in and run the scan. We'll get that into detail, but right now only wanted to focus on this particular feature. So if it's a form-based authentication, you can easily sorry here, yeah, you can easily provide the username and password, and burp should be able to log in. So that's a good number of features here. And then also you can see across all the tasks, you can see all the vulnerabilities which are captured here. And of course you can also go here and find the host wise vulnerabilities here and see the details here, right? So these are some of the great features that I've seen in the burp 2.0. Of course, at first you might find like, okay, this is very confusing, but it's not. Once you get used to it, it's pretty straightforward. um, and the best practices that I would talk about is always define scope in your burp suite. So in the target window where you have the scope, always define the scope so you have better control on what traffic burp is capturing. Otherwise, you will be overloaded with the amount of traffic that burp captures through your browsers. So that's one of the thing. And then also in burp 2.0, another one is make sure you set the right configuration for the right URL, because you don't want to waste too much time of scanner by sitting in front of the system and scanning for the random stuff. So make sure you are scanning the right things for right vulnerabilities. And also sometimes what I've seen is uh, usually burps gives you the warning. So if you are scanning the same URL with no parameter, for example, let's say index.php, then there is index1.php, those are considered different URLs. But what if you have it when the application is crawling, it will have multiple uh, let's say image file, or there are so many like 100 URLs with no parameters, And it doesn't make sense to scan all of them because if there is a vulnerability and you can take the samples, of course you have a time, then you can scan all of them. But I generally do the sampling approach in this in such examples because I don't want Burp to scan like 100 URLs with no parameters. That doesn't make any sense. Of course, it can find any vulnerabilities into the headers or something, but you can do it via just scanning 5 or 6 random URLs. So that's some of the things, like, you may want to consider when you are using this Burp scanning. So that's about it I want to discuss in this video. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy watching this video, and write me in the comment section what else you would like to learn about the Burp Suite. Of course, we'll keep continue doing this on the other features of the Burp Suite. And also, if you haven't already, check out the Cybersecurity TV Facebook page, where I post the updates, regular updates. That's all right now. Subscribe to my channel if you want to receive the more videos, every weekly videos. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you guys next week.